Hey, Masters of the Universe fans, Scott ToyGuru Neitlich back as your host for Masters of the Universe Classics Director's Commentary, going figure by figure, talking about how they came to be and my particular memories of them from being the brand manager for about 95% of the line. And today we're here to talk about the star of the amazing 80s animated show Vikor and the Green Goddess. No, just kidding, that was just some amazing fan art. But we are talking about Vikor, and that's because it was now the end of 2010, and we were starting 2011, our third year for the line. And we had now really established a nice audience and a nice subscription base, and we knew that we could kind of, shall we say, stretch a little bit. You know, we weren't just limited to the 8-back and the figures from the vintage line, and it was really time to dig a little deeper and to start looking at the whole universe of Masters of the Universe, the universe of Masters of the Universe, the Masters-verse, I guess as they're calling it now, and see who else that might make a good figure. And high on that list was doing an action figure of this guy. And if you're not already a fan of the line and don't already have him, you might be saying, okay, who the heck is that guy? I definitely don't recognize him from Filmation, and I definitely don't recognize him from that Netflix She-Ra series. So what the heck is going on with Barbarian Man? Well, Barbarian Man is a representation of the artwork of a concept version of He-Man drawn by Mark Taylor during the development stage of He-Man. You can see a few videos I've done on that. And this is the drawing. This is the actual drawing here. Now, He-Man eventually was given blonde hair because Ray Wagner here, who was the president of Mattel, had blonde hair, and there's no better way to get management on your side than to make an action figure with their hair color. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why He-Man has blonde hair. And of course, he did evolve. He for a while still had the horned helmet and some more of the barbarian look, but eventually he lost the helmet, so you could see Ray's hair, and that was the He-Man we came to know and love. Now, there is a rumor still to this day that He-Man was just Conan rebranded, but I can tell you absolutely that is not true. While Mattel was looking at the Conan series or movie as a possible action figure line, once they read the script and realized the nudity and violence that was out, the team that was developing He-Man was a completely different team, and the Barbarian theme was one of 3 themes, space, military, and barbarian, that were looked at as a new action figure line. So Conan was not He-Man rebranded. But if you look at some of the Frazetta paintings from the 60s and 70s, and both Mark Taylor and Roger Sweet, who were 2 of the originators of Masters of the Universe, have noted what a big influence these paintings were on the line. And, this painting in particular, is this just not Vikor? Or at least that is what we call the concept painting character that we're doing a video on today. This is darn close, I would say, to basically that Mark Taylor really just reproduced this painting in a drawing form, and that was kind of what kicked off He-Man. And no, I definitely don't want to go down as saying that Mark Taylor just, ripped off these existing paintings. Obviously, he didn't. But the influence is clearly there, and I would say the influence is there even stronger than it is with Conan the Barbarian, especially because, well, I don't know. It's kind of actually one of those vicious circles with Conan influencing these paintings and these paintings influencing Conan, and who knows where the snake eating its own tail ends. It is, though, interesting that this one particular painting that Frazetta did in the 70s, or actually, was this the late 60s? I can't remember the date of this painting. But this one in particular went on to, I guess you could say, be a big influence on Masters of the Universe, because it was created, or rather recreated, not just once for the vintage mini-comics, but it was then recreated a second time for Masters of the Universe Classic mini-comics, because, hey, we all love making homages. But again, back to Conan, and who was originally a novel by Robert Howard. You can see the original concept for him was pretty far from what we think of him in pop culture with the horned helmet and, Arnold Schwarzenegger and all of that. So the whole idea that this was just a Conan ripoff, I mean, come on, barbarians are a theme, like ninjas or soldiers, and barbarian was one of the themes that was presented. And while Conan is a well-known barbarian, he doesn't get to be the only barbarian. But I will say, Vikor as an action figure is probably the coolest Conan action figure that will ever exist. I mean, he could very well just be Conan or be one of those paintings come to life, if you will, because it was amazing, and the Horseman just did an unbelievable job. Now, obviously, when looking at the history of barbarian action figures, again, you can't escape the shadow of Conan, especially when you're dealing with the long black hair, which Vikor had. And there have been many Conan action figures over the years. Mego had its soft goods Conan, and Real Toys NECA has done figures based on the movie, based on Arnold Schwarzenegger's look. Well, not look, but I mean he played Conan. And McFarlane Toys have done Conan figures. It's like every company has had its turn doing Conan. It's one of those licenses that just flies around all the time. Toy Biz took a crack at it with Legendary Heroes, which, man, I wish this line hadn't ended because there were so many cool figures waiting in the wings to be made. This was like the post-Marvel Legends Toy Biz last hurrah when they did independent comic book characters. And this was a Conan figure based on the comic book appearance. And although you can really, if you look at that sword, boy, does that look like a 2000X sword. And I don't know, there's definitely some Skeletor imagery going on in that belt and stuff like that. But again, you're dealing with barbarians, and there's it's ironic, right? I mean, speaking of irony, there's this guy, of course, which was the Super 7 Conan figure, which the reason I point to this as being ironic is because he is built based on a MOTU Classics body. So you finally literally have a He-Man body being used for an official Conan figure. So, yeah, what are you going to do? I mean, come on. Barbarian is just a theme, much like, pirates and ninjas and that kind of thing. But they did pretty much nail it. This was Conan directly taken from the first Marvel Savage Sword of Conan cover, and I will say Super 7 did a great job of recreating this figure, even though they used MOTU Classics parts, which, again, is just like blows my mind that MOTU Classics parts were being used for an actual Conan figure after all the years of the debate of whether or not He-Man is Conan. All right, back to Vikor, excuse me. There was also Vikron. This is Vikor. So he came fully loaded. He was really an amazing figure. He was the first figure to use real metal parts on the chains on his hands. And of course, this was something I did a lot. I paired him up with Ultimate Battleground Tila because they just kind of looked like they went really well together. But even in package, man, I mean, he just looked awesome. And he was a great way to kick off 2011 to really show that this was the year that we were going to dig a little deeper, and we were going to offer surprise and delight, if you will. Figures that you might not be expecting. Now, why did we not just call this Concept He-Man? I mean, there is definitely a precedent for doing concept action figures in the toy world, this being the Ralph McQuarrie Concept Luke Skywalker that was released for the 30th anniversary of Star Wars. Well, the reason we gave him a unique bio is because we wanted him to be a merchandisable character and to be someone part of the universe and part of the lore. And of course, we also used his bio to introduce the Fighting Foemen, who wound up being the model kit drivers after years of debate of who these guys could be. But it was a perfect example of using the bios to set up future figure releases. And this really, as I said, it made him a unique character. Yes, we could have just released him as Concept He-Man. But then, when we did the He-Man trio a few years later with Vikron, again, is that also Concept He-Man? We knew that there were several Concept He-Mans and He-Men, so we wanted to make each of them a unique character with the idea that they could have a personality, they could be merchandisable, and they could join the other characters in the line as just yet another MOTU Classics figure. And he was set to be one of the many He-Men who carried the Sword of He, which color changed for each character. That was the idea that whoever held it, the sword changed for them. Now, while we didn't include the sword of he with Vikor, we did say that the version, the blue one that came in the weapons pack, was meant for him, which it was. So that was how you kind of filled in the gap there. I also know a lot of fans wanted him to sort of be the arch enemy of Demo Man, or D-Man, the proto-concept for Skeletor that we also wound up doing as a figure, that bright green blur there you see in the foreground. But again, surprise and delight. We wound up going in a different direction with Demo Man, and Vikron, which was never in the vintage line. Maybe this is how he might have looked. He became, we wanted him to be part of the He-Man legacy and one of the many He-Men throughout the years before the sword wound up with Prince Adam, who was the, like the He-Man of legend, the chosen one, the true He-Man who was going to save Eternia, etc., etc. And, at the end of the day, it was about taking this artwork and really, turning it into an action figure, which, again, wow, I mean, the Horsemen just did it. They just found an amazing way to make that artwork come alive and become a posable 3D action figure. And that's part of the fun of what Classics was all about. And I'm really glad we did this figure. He's one of my absolute favorites in the line. And I think, whether you just look at him as a painting coming alive or a He-Man concept coming alive or Conan, however you view him, he's an awesome barbarian figure. And in the end, isn't that what matters most? The answer is maybe.